Alex, I spent most of my life thinking the smartest thing in my shop was a well-honed chisel. It doesn't talk back, it doesn't need a firmware update, and it definitely doesn't stop working because the cloud is having a rainy day.
And yet, here we are. And I currently see more circuit boards on your bench than wood glue. What happened to the man who once told me that if it has a battery, it's just a paperweight waiting to happen?
Low blow, truly. But honestly, I got tired of walking across the yard at 10 o'clock at night because I couldn't remember if I left the dust extractor running or the heater on in the finishing room. I realized I was spending half my creative time being a night watchman for my own tools. So, I dipped a toe into automation. Then, I fell in. Now the shop talks to me, though half the time it's just complaining that the Wi-Fi is weak behind the drill press.
It's funny because most people hear home automation and they think of a fridge that orders milk or a vacuum that gets stuck under the sofa. But for the makers listening, the folks who actually like getting their hands dirty, this is less about luxury and more about building a nervous system for your house.
Exactly. It's about making the environment work as hard as you do. But man, there is a graveyard of smart light bulbs in my scrap bin that tells a very expensive story of how not to do it. I once tried to wire a custom sensor to my garage door using a knockoff controller I found in a bargain bin. Let's just say it decided that 3 in the morning was the optimal time to perform ventilation cycles. My neighbor thought I was running a clandestine midnight shipping port.
The clandestine port aesthetic is very in right now, Tiger, but that's the perfect place to start. Today, we're doing a deep dive into DIY smart home automation. We're moving past the out-of-the-box stuff and looking at how you actually plan, build, and, most importantly, don't break your house.
Before you buy a single gadget, you have to pick your language. In the tech world, they call it an ecosystem. I call it deciding which boss you want to work for. You've got your HomeKits, your Google Homes, your Vivint. If you don't pick a lane early, you end up with a house that speaks 6 languages and none of them are talking to each other.
It's like trying to bolt a metric nut onto a fractional bolt. It looks like it should work until you're 3 threads in and everything seizes up.
That is a painful and very accurate metaphor. If you're a set it and forget it person, you might go with something like Apple HomeKit or even Vivint if you want the security side baked in. But for the tinkerers, the folks who want to move the walls and rewrite the rules, you're looking at things like Samsung Smart Things, or if you really want to lose your weekends to glory, Home Assistant.
Let's talk about those languages, though, because the glossary alone can make a person want to go back to candles and carrier pigeons. Zigbee, Z-Wave, Matter. It sounds like a bad sci-fi novel.
It does. But here's the skinny. Your Wi-Fi is already crowded. It's like a highway at rush hour with everyone trying to stream movies. If you put 50 smart light bulbs on your Wi-Fi, your Netflix is going to start looking like a watercolor painting. That's why we use Zigbee or Z-Wave. They're like little side streets. They're low power, they don't clog your main internet, and they create a mesh.
A mesh? Like a safety net?
Sort of. Each device acts like a repeater. If the bulb in the hallway can't hear the main hub, it listens to the switch in the kitchen. They pass the message along like a bucket brigade. I learned that the hard way when I tried to put a smart lock on the leaf mulcher shed about 100 feet from the house. It kept dying until I realized I just needed one smart plug halfway between the house and the shed to act as a stepping stone.
See, that's a real tip. People think they need a bigger router, but really they just need a better relay. Okay, Tiger, let's get into the foundational stuff. If someone is standing in their workshop right now, looking at their messy workbench, what is the entry drug for home automation?
Lighting. Always lighting. But don't just buy the bulbs that change colors. Those are for kids' bedrooms and people who want their living room to look like a spaceship. Look at smart switches.
Why switches over bulbs?
Because of the guest problem. This is the universal law of automation. If your mother-in-law walks into the room and flips a physical switch, and that kills the smart bulb so your automation stops working, you have failed as a craftsman. A smart switch replaces the thing in the wall. The light stays smart even if the physical toggle is flipped.
That's the human-centric design. I remember you telling me about a certain smart bathroom fan incident.
We don't talk about the humidity sensor of 2022. I tried to automate the fan so it would turn on when the shower got steamy. I had the sensitivity set so high that if I even sighed too loudly near the mirror, the fan would kick on like a jet engine. I spent 3 nights waking up to the sound of a turbine because I hadn't accounted for the natural humidity changes at 2 a.m. The secret is hysteresis, letting the system have a little wiggle room before it reacts.
Hysteresis. I'm writing that down. It sounds like something you'd take for an allergy, but it's actually the key to a quiet house. What about the security angle? A lot of people get into this because they want to feel safe, or they want to make sure the garage door isn't standing wide open while they're at the grocery store.
Security is the heavy lifting of the smart home. You've got your entry controls, smart locks, doorbell cameras. That's the front line. But for me, the magic is in the what if scenarios. I have a water leak sensor under my shop's utility sink. It cost 20 bucks. Last winter, a pipe cracked. That $20 sensor sent a scream to my phone at 4 a.m., and I saved about $3,000 worth of walnut lumber from becoming a very expensive swamp. Alibi. That's the invisible automation. It's not about the flash, it's about the insurance. But let's keep it real. DIYing your security can be a rabbit hole. How do you know when you're out of your depth? When you start looking at the internal wiring of your furnace, it's time to take a breath. Look, start with the edge devices. Plugs, bulbs, locks. If you want to integrate a full-scale alarm system that calls the fire department, sometimes it pays to look at a prosumer system like Vivint or SimpliSafe that plays nice with your DIY stuff. There is no shame in having a brain you didn't build yourself if it keeps the house from burning down.
True. But there's also the room-by-room strategy mentioned in the guides. I think people try to automate the whole house in one weekend. They buy 20 sensors, 10 plugs, and 3 hubs, and then they spend Sunday night crying in the dark because their kitchen lights won't turn on unless the toaster is plugged in.
I feel seen. I once spent a whole Saturday trying to make my coffee pot turn on when the bedroom blinds opened. By the time I got the logic right, it was 4 p.m., and I was too tired for caffeine. The room-by-room approach is the only way to stay sane. Start with the one thing that annoys you every day. For me, it was the outdoor lights. I could never remember to flip them off. Once I conquered that, I moved to the shop heater. Small wins, Alex. Small wins build a system. Big ambitions build a headache.
Let's talk about the DIY part of DIY Smart Home. Not just buying things, but actually making things. You've been playing with some microcontrollers lately, haven't you?
Oh, I've been getting into the weeds. ESP32 chips. They're these tiny little boards, cheaper than a fancy cup of coffee. I've been embedding them into my woodworking projects. I built a hidden valet drawer for my keys, and I put a Hall effect sensor. That's a magnet sensor inside the wood. When I drop my keys in the right spot, the workshop shuts down the high power circuit to my saws and turns on the perimeter alarm.
Wait, so the furniture itself is the interface? No apps, no voice commands?
Exactly, that's the master level of this craft. The best automation shouldn't feel like tech. It should feel like magic. It should be invisible. If I have to pull out my phone to turn on a light, I might as well have used the switch. But if the light knows I'm standing at the lathe and brightens up because it's dark outside, that's craftsmanship.
I love that. It's moving away from gadgetry and toward intent. But Tiger, what about the Wi-Fi problem you mentioned earlier? If the internet goes down, does your house turn into a pumpkin?
That's the big fear. And it's why I'm a huge advocate for local control. If your smart home requires a server in Virginia to turn on the light in your basement in Idaho, you've built a fragile system. When you're choosing your gear, look for stuff that works locally. If the internet dies, the smarts should stay inside the 4 walls of your house.
Okay, let's wrap this up for the folks who are ready to head to the hardware store or the electronics site. What's the Tiger Den takeaway for starting a smart home today?
Treat it like a piece of furniture you're building. You wouldn't start by carving the intricate scrolls on the legs before you've built the frame. 1. Build the frame. Pick one ecosystem. If you're an iPhone person, look at HomeKit. If you like to tinker, Home Assistant. 2. Check your lumber. Make sure your Wi-Fi is solid, or better yet, get a hub that uses Zigbee or Z-Wave to take the load off. 3. Measure twice, cut once. Start with one room or one problem. Fix the garage door, anxiety, or the dark hallway first. 4. Safety first. Don't DIY the stuff that can kill you or your homeowner's insurance. Keep the high voltage stuff professional.
And maybe don't set your humidity sensor to hypersensitive unless you want your bathroom to sound like a flight deck at 2 a.m.
Especially that. Look, at the end of the day, these are just more tools in the chest. A smart sensor is just a fancy measuring tape that measures state instead of inches. Use them to give yourself more time for the real work, the making, the building, and the being present in your home.
Well said. I'm going home to see if I can make my lamp turn on when I open the fridge. Not because it's useful, but just to see if I can.
And that, my friend, is how the addiction begins. We'll see you all next time in the den. Keep your blades sharp and your firmware updated.